On her very first day working at Hokkyoku Department Store, the innocent young girl found herself constantly making mistakes, simply because all the customers were adorable animals. In the middle of her panic, she even accidentally stepped on chairman. Fortunately, the chairman didn't blame her. He only told Akino to learn more from her seniors. Serving customers is not about blindly lowering yourself to please them. Only by understanding the true needs reflected in a customer's eyes can one grasp the true meaning of service. Hearing this, Akino began staring intently into every customer's eyes. That was when she noticed a sea mink standing in the corner. His eyes were filled with confusion. Akino tried walking up to ask him what was wrong. The sea mink became excited as if he had just found a savior. He pointed to a pair of owls in the corner and told Akino that they were important clients of his. His company had assigned him the task of properly entertaining them. The sea mink had planned to bring them to Hokkyoku Department Store to pick out some gifts, but when he tried to pay for them, the owls refused. And without paying for the gifts, he wouldn't be able to complete the task assigned by his company. Hearing this, Akino's expression turned serious. She decided she would definitely help the sea mink, so she followed closely behind the owl couple, carefully observing their every move. Akino noticed that Mistress Owl often hesitated between two items. Seeing this, Akino instantly came up with an idea. She suggested to the sea mink that he give Mistress Owl the item she didn't end up buying. Perhaps it would make her happy. After hearing this, the sea mink immediately bought the item and gave it to Mistress Owl. She was so delighted that she practically took flight. Seeing his wife so happy, Mr. Owl immediately decided to cooperate with the sea mink's company. Overjoyed, the sea mink rushed to find Akino to express his gratitude. It was also the first time Akino realized just how fulfilling the job of a sales attendant could be. After years of dating, Mr. Wolf finally prepared to propose to his girlfriend, but because of his low self-esteem, he kept hesitating and couldn't bring himself to act. He firmly believed that his beautiful girlfriend only chose him because there was no one better around her. Sitting in the restaurant, Mr. Wolf fell into deep hesitation. At that moment, Akino noticed his troubled expression. She took the initiative to step forward and ask what was wrong. Mr. Wolf told her about his plan to propose, but he wasn't sure whether, on the day of the proposal, he would have the courage to take out the ring. After hearing this, Akino immediately assured him that she would definitely help him succeed. But Akino didn't realize how serious it was to make promises to customers. If a promise couldn't be fulfilled, the reputation of Hokkyoku Department Store would suffer. To complete this task, every employee had no choice but to give it their all. Fortunately, Akino had already thought of a plan in advance. On the day of the proposal, she would hide the engagement ring inside an ice sculpture on the table. By serving each dish at precise times and carefully controlling Mr. Wolf's eating pace, when he finished his meal, the ice sculpture would melt completely, revealing the engagement ring. Akino's plan sounded perfect, but it required flawless coordination between the kitchen staff and the front of house team. Even Mr. Wolf's eating speed had to stay within the plan. If anything went wrong, the proposal would fail. No one knew whether it would work, but they had no choice except to proceed. However, on the day of the proposal, Mr. Wolf made the first mistake due to extreme nervousness. He drank the bowl of water meant for washing hands in one gulp, without noticing at all the strange looks from the surrounding guests. Mistress Wolf hesitated slightly, then calmly drank the hand-washing water as well. The way she drank it down seemed to be telling Mr. Wolf not to be nervous. Perhaps only someone who truly loves another person would be willing to go along with such foolish things. After drinking the water, Mr. Wolf was no longer nervous, and he didn't make any more mistakes. Everything continued smoothly according to plan. After the final dessert was served, Akino brought out a cup of jasmine tea. After taking a sip, Mistress Wolf began reminiscing about the first time they met. That jasmine tea had been carefully prepared by Mr. Wolf. It was also the tea they drank when they first met. He never expected that Mistress Wolf would remember their first meeting so clearly. That cup of jasmine tea bore witness to their encounter, and also to their new beginning. As love grew warmer, the ice sculpture melted at just the right moment. The engagement ring dropped onto the plate. Everything happened perfectly. The timing couldn't have been better. Without any mishaps, Mr. Wolf successfully proposed. A love story reached its perfect conclusion. All the co-workers gathered around Akino, celebrating this victory that belonged to everyone. On that very day, a Barbary lion walked into Hokkyoku Department Store. He took out a scented bookmark and said he wanted a perfume with the exact same fragrance. The scent on the bookmark was very faint. No one could tell what kind of perfume it was. Luckily, Aunt Bear, who was well versed in the art of fragrances, recognized the scent instantly. But before the Barbary lion could feel happy, the store manager suddenly announced that the perfume had been discontinued several years ago. After hearing this, the Barbary lion left in disappointment. He once made a promise with his girlfriend. If he could find this perfume, she would marry him. But now, he had lost all hope. In despair, the Barbary lion walked straight toward a high place. Fortunately, Akino appeared just in time and saved him. Akino promised him that she would definitely find the perfume. With Akino's promise, the Barbary lion regained hope. But at that moment, Akino herself felt utterly hopeless. She had once again made a promise to a customer, and this time, it was an even more impossible task. Thankfully, none of her co-workers blamed her. After all, under those circumstances, saving a life mattered more than anything else. Now the most urgent task was to find that perfume. Suddenly, the manager thought of someone, Maruki, a veteran employee who had retired many years ago. He was the most experienced staff member of them all. So they went to find Maruki, and he agreed to help. But they waited for a long time, and still received no reply from him. By the time the Barbary lion returned as scheduled, the perfume still hadn't been found. At that point, all Akino could do was bow deeply and apologize. The Barbary lion left in disappointment. Perhaps he might do something foolish again. But suddenly, Maruki appeared and stopped him. He said he would show him a magic trick. In the next moment, Maruki produced that very perfume. The fragrance instantly filled the air. It was unmistakably the discontinued perfume. No one knew how many phone calls Maruki had made to find it. In the end, he obtained the last bottle from a female customer he had once served many years ago. What made this possible wasn't magic. It was a heart willing to serve customers. At that moment, Akino still hadn't realized that the help she gave the Barbary lion would one day return to her in another form. On this day, Akino met Mistress Parrot. She took out just $1 and said she wanted to buy the best gift in the world. After asking, Akino learned that Mistress Parrot's daughter had been bedridden for many years. Most of her life had been spent in hospitals. This Christmas was no exception. And now, her daughter didn't have much time left. Mistress Parrot wanted to give her daughter a gift, but years of medical expenses had drained her savings. All she had left was $1. Only then did Akino understand the weight of that single dollar. So she began running all over the store, searching for a suitable gift for Mistress Parrot. But no matter what she found, none of it felt like the best gift. Just as she was at a loss, the colorful streamers flying through the store and customers taking photos suddenly gave Akino an idea. She had a plan. But at that exact moment, the department store was hosting a Christmas event. They had invited the famous sculptor, Mammoth Master. Akino had to go and attend to him. Just as Akino was feeling torn, the Barbary lion appeared before her. They had come to thank her. Akino immediately asked them to help prepare Mistress Parrot's gift. After handing the task to the Barbary lion, Akino finally felt at ease and went to attend to Mammoth. At that time, a large crowd had gathered around Mammoth's work, admiring the ice sculpture of a saber-toothed tiger. It was the masterpiece most beloved by Mammoth and his wife. But suddenly, one customer accidentally stepped on another customer's tail. As the two collided, they crashed into the ice sculpture. The saber teeth of the tiger snapped off. Mammoth's agent angrily demanded an explanation from the department store, emphasizing the priceless nature of the artwork, something money could never measure. Akino stepped forward on her own initiative. She said she was willing to apologize to Mammoth's wife. No matter what request was made of her, she would do her best to fulfill it. But the agent said sorrowfully that Mammoth's wife had already passed away. At that moment, Mammoth suddenly said he wouldn't pursue the matter any further. Perhaps it was this state of mind that allowed him to become a master. Still, he sat outside quietly, filled with sadness. Akino approached, wanting to comfort him, but couldn't find the words. Instead, Mammoth spoke first. No matter how exquisite things in this world may be, compared to the eternity of the universe, they are nothing more than fleeting fireworks. No matter how beautiful an ice sculpture is, it will eventually melt into a pool of water. But at that very moment, the two Barbary lions completed the task Akino had entrusted to them. In the recorded video, the Barbary lions showed Jansi, who lay in a hospital bed, the entirety of Hokkyoku Department Store. She saw Mr. Wolf preparing for his wedding. She also saw animals of all kinds shopping throughout the store. Moment after moment of warmth, face after face filled with different smiles, became the best gift imaginable for Jansi lying in her hospital bed. And all of it came from a mother's love. At the same time, the customer who had accidentally broken the ice sculpture came to find Mammoth. He had come to apologize, and he was willing to offer compensation, but he was only a pastry chef apprentice and had very little money. So, instead, he made a cake for Mammoth as an expression of his apology. Akino stepped forward and unwrapped the cake. The cake was shaped exactly like Mammoth and his wife. Perhaps it is moments like these that give Hokkyoku Department Store its true meaning. The cake was placed into the hands of someone who loved deeply. A $1 gift carried priceless love, and it would soon bring hope to Jansi in her hospital room. Not long after, a Miss Seal came into the store. As the attendant, Akino escorted her to the elevator. But just as Akino turned to leave, Miss Seal asked her to stay and accompany her while she tried on clothes. Akino had no choice but to agree. With Akino by her side, Miss Seal tried on many outfits. In the end, she purchased all of them. Akino could only carry a pile of shopping bags, following behind her as she continued browsing. But when Miss Seal tried on a white dress, she suddenly said that she wanted to return all the previous clothes, because only this white dress matched her necklace. At this point, Akino felt a bit unhappy, but she could only comply. Miss Seal continued trying on the dress. She wanted a larger size, but the clerk told her that the larger size was out of stock. After hearing this, Miss Seal immediately began making things difficult for Akino. She insisted that she wanted it now. Akino could only apologize repeatedly, but Miss Seal became even more demanding. She said that service staff were no different from servants, and servants should satisfy all of their master's demands. Even an apology should be done by kneeling and bowing one's head. Akino felt deeply wronged, but in order not to disturb other customers, she knelt down on the floor, preparing to bow her head and apologize. At that moment, Mori stepped in and stopped Akino. She then politely asked Miss Seal to leave the area. Her words infuriated Miss Seal. Miss Seal shouted loudly, claiming that customers were gods. But Mori calmly replied that Miss Seal's behavior had already seriously affected the other gods. Mori's words were reasonable and well-grounded. They left Miss Seal humiliated and furious. She stormed out of the department store. Later, feeling wronged, Akino hid backstage. But the store's auditors slowly emerged from the shadows. She told Akino that she might feel wronged because of Miss Seal's behavior, but the cause of it all was Akino herself. Because she tolerated Miss Seal's demands without limits, the customer only became more and more excessive, until she finally began making completely unreasonable demands. Working in service does not mean endless tolerance. An attendant who only ever says yes to customers is not qualified. Knowing when to say no is where an attendant's true value lies. At that moment, Akino finally understood. The job of an attendant was far more complex than she had imagined. Life is not a fairy tale. Nothing is ever that simple. And yet, life is still full of hope. Akino finally received the news that she had passed her probation. Miss Seal would still return to shop at the store. Only this time, her attitude was much better. And inside the department store, there now stood an ice sculpture gifted by Mammoth. It was carved in Akino's likeness. The department store continued to operate as usual, and life continued on. Good things and bad things alike kept happening without end. The doors of Hokkyoku Department Store will always remain open to those who carry sincerity in their hearts. May your days ahead be filled with warmth. May every time you push open a door bring just the right measure of kindness. And may every sincere effort you give be met with gentle reciprocation.